Flynn tried to plead the Fifth. Right. We don't believe that you can take a blanket immunity on the Fifth in terms of documents. We'll take some further action today, 2 sets of options. And as Chairman Burr mentioned yesterday, we're not taking contempt of Congress off the table.
All right, that was Senator Mark Warner, top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, threatening further action against ex-National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, who yesterday invoked the Fifth Amendment in the Senate's Russia investigation. Joining our conversation from the New York Times newsroom, political reporter Nick Confessori and NBC's chief legal correspondent Ari Melber, who's becoming my private legal tutor. All right, Ari, what else can the Senate Intel Committee do? What other tools are in their arsenal once Mike Flynn invokes the Fifth Amendment?
The main thing a congressional committee can do if they feel someone is being unlawfully unresponsive is hold them in contempt and go to a court to try to get them basically to do what they want, in this case, fork over the docks.
And what's the punishment if you, I mean, is contempt, is that another, if you don't comply, well, then what happens?
It just means they're mad at you.
You don't go to jail. I mean, is it another crime? Is it a new crime?
What it is at a judge's discretion. It means you can be held in jail, potentially indefinitely, to force compliance. So it is different technically than being found guilty of a crime, but it has the same effect, and it's a blunt instrument. You can be in court and the judge can sanction you for talking out of turn in court. Talking out might not be a crime, but you might be in jail for it.
All right, Elise Jordan, I heard you say something yesterday. All of the hours on MSNBC are riveting to me, but you were on an hour, and what you said was the most riveting thing I saw on our network. You were talking about your late husband and a film coming out on Netflix, I think, at the end of the week, right?
Yes, on Friday. It's called War Machine, and it's starring Brad Pitt, Anthony Michael Hall, Tilda Swinton, Ben Kingsley, and it's based on my late husband's book, The Operators. And Mike Flynn is a central character in this book, and so anyone who had read the book published in 2012 would not be that surprised by the behavior they're seeing exhibited now by Mike Flynn. In the book, he jokes about his security clearance and says he lied to get his security clearance. Whether that was, amusing his pals on his team, who knows, but he did say it. Michael reported it and wrote about it in a book that is, really foreshadowing a lot of current day history.
And it's worth reminding people what Michael's beat was. I mean, he wrote the definitive piece on Stan McChrystal, and Michael Flynn was in the, I don't even want to call it background, but
he was his chief intelligence officer in Afghanistan, and also told Michael during that trip that we would never find Osama bin Laden, and Michael ended up not printing that in this Rolling Stone story, but used it in the eventual book, which by that time, of course, we had called Osama bin Laden. But it's interesting that Mike Flynn was promoted in the Obama administration, rather than, that's part of the problem. I think that there wasn't enough attention paid to maybe his actions as, kind of the rogue military officer, which he was incredibly talented and did a ton of hugely important work for our country.
In the field.
In the field, and then what you hear from colleagues after the fact, and I think it was Admiral McRaven who was on this network and said, that something changed in him during this last election period. And it's really a shame that it detracts from all of the incredible work he did for so many years.
And I've heard this from folks in the intelligence community. I've heard General Hayden said this on Brian Williams' program at 11. He said, to sort of sacrifice an otherwise distinguished career with all of the recent, I don't know, I don't want to put words in General Hayden's mouth, but this chapter really is not a bright spot in General Flynn's career. And I wonder, Philip, your paper has been on the Flynn beat with the pedal to the metal, as has Nick's. But what do you make of the news today that he may have lied in that background check? I mean, I've filled out this SF-286. There's another one when you get more clearances. I mean, you take it so deadly seriously. You're calling all your college roommates, did I ever do this? Did I ever do that? I mean, what about lying on your background form?
I mean, at this point, the picture we have of Michael Flynn over the course of the past 18 months or so is this person who, I mean, it's hard to overestimate the extent to which he's been a drag on Donald Trump's presidency. I mean, he is, I would say, 80% of the problem that Donald Trump is experiencing right now is related somehow directly to Michael Flynn, either because of his relationship with Russia or his relationship with Turkey. I mean, that particular thing, honestly, is it's this massive portrait of this person who is in a bad position for Donald Trump. This is a very small part of that portrait. I mean, Michael Flynn, there are so many things that we have learned about him over the course of the past 4 months. all of which are making Donald Trump's job hard. But this all goes back to the fact that Donald Trump, his sense of loyalty is that Michael Flynn was there with him from day one, so he's going to be with Michael Flynn. And it is a huge political mistake, but these stayed.
And
there were so many huge warning signs.
And even as the White House tries to now distance itself from Flynn and put the focus back on, well, why was he ever granted the ability to keep his security clearance under Obama, that isn't helped by the fact that you're now getting all of these reports about essentially Trump asking investigators, asking Comey to let go of the investigation into Flynn in particular and to try and protect him. I also think I wanted to point out, because people keep asking about security clearance, retired generals, as a courtesy, it's often the case that they are allowed to keep their security clearance. You'll remember that he was actually forced out of the DIA for behavioral issues, creating a toxic environment. And it was these payments that he received from foreign governments were not in fact known at the time. And as we now understand, you have to actually report those payments or keep your security clearance. Michael Flynn clearly did not.
Nick, I want to bring you in on this because I have a different theory. I don't think Donald Trump is loyal to anyone. Just watching, as you and I have, the way that Newt Gingrich's post-election career arc turned, the way Chris Christie's arc turned and turned and turned, the way that Rudy Giuliani's dreams of being Secretary of State. I mean, I actually don't buy that he's loyal to anyone except Donald Trump and maybe Ivanka. But what do you make of your papers reporting this morning about Flynn potentially lying? And I mean, how much money do you have to make to forget making $45,000 in Russia?
I mean, it's pretty amazing, right? There are people who lose jobs or are denied jobs for lying on their background check about smoking pot in college.
I know all of them. Yes, I mean, after the recount. Yes.
Exactly, and here is a guy who lied about a source of income from a foreign power that is an adversary. It's ludicrous and very strange, and you have to wonder why he lied on that form and said it was a U.S. company, or if he was somehow misinformed or confused. But as to his role in the Trump orbit, we saw some reports that, he spent night and day with the now president. He was on the campaign plane with him constantly. I saw him at campaign events when Flynn was one of the few people who would appear at national security events and as essentially a validator for Donald Trump on the campaign trail. So I think to some extent, he was the only choice for that job of somebody who the president-elect trusted at the time. Of course, now, as we're pointing out, he is a huge drag on the presidency and could be, essentially the point of the spear on the investigation if he flips. Nick,
let me just follow up on that, because the president is facing questions about whether today's story that he pressured his own intel chiefs to basically rapidly respond to the Comey investigation. I mean, Flynn could be at the center of all of the president's legal and political problems vis-a-vis Russia.
That's right. It could go back as the worst choice he made was hiring Flynn, although he's had a lot of tough choices recently. And just to point out something that we haven't really talked about yet, Nicole, these investigations are ongoing. So the Trump administration, people in the White House have acted as though the facts at the beginning of the investigation are the only facts. What is happening here is that investigators are digging. And what they've tried to do is stop the investigation from even happening preemptively. And there was kind of a clumsiness to it when you saw there was a quote, I believe, in the Washington Post or perhaps the New York Times, where essentially somebody asks law enforcement officials, can we do this? Right. Can we ask you to call it off? So there is a real unfamiliarity here with the protocol and the rules.
All right, Ari, last word.
I think we might overuse the word loyalty for things that are more questionable than loyalty.
I'm right with you.
These multiple accounts of potential meddling in manners that are inappropriate and potentially illegal, which raises the question, not only is Trump loyal to Flynn, but is Flynn loyal to Trump, or is it something more? Is there a reason why this individual is so intent on being so quiet? Is he protecting or hiding something? And I've said this before, I always have to say it. Pleading the fifth doesn't mean you're guilty.
Right.
But why is he so intent on keeping things that might make Donald Trump look good?
All right, Nick Confessori, thank you for stepping away from your reporting to join us. Ari Melber, thank you so much for coming in for my latest tutoring. All right, up next, the latest on the deadly terror attack in the UK.